Every person has a certain number of behavior patterns. These patterns are not roles, but ego states. In transactional analysis, we see that people have three main ego states. These are the parent, the adult, and the child. Think of them as different parts of your personality. Each part thinks, feels, and behaves in its own specific way. You can see these states in the way a person stands, their gestures, their voice, and the words they use. Understanding these states is the first step toward understanding why we interact with others in the ways that we do. It helps explain why some conversations go well and others end in conflict. These ego states are not just abstract ideas. They are real psychological states that we all experience. The parent ego state is a collection of recordings in the brain of external events. These are things we saw our own parents or other authority figures do. The adult ego state is our ability to think and determine action for ourselves. It is the part of us that gathers information and makes objective decisions based on facts. Finally, the child ego state is the collection of feelings, thoughts, and behaviors from our own childhood. It is the seat of our emotions, creativity, and spontaneity. We move between these states all the time, often without realizing it. A single person can shift from one state to another in a matter of seconds. For example, a man might be calmly discussing a project with a colleague, operating from his adult state. Then his phone rings and it's his child who is upset. He might instantly switch to a comforting parent state. A moment later, a friend might tell him a funny joke, and he could laugh from his spontaneous child state. This constant shifting is a normal part of human interaction. The key is to become aware of which state you are in and which state the other person is in. Recognizing these states in ourselves and others provides a powerful tool for better communication. When we understand where someone is coming from, we can respond more effectively. If a coworker is speaking from a critical parent state, responding from our own defensive child state might lead to an argument. However, if we can engage our adult state, we can analyze the situation objectively and choose a more productive response. This self-awareness allows us to break free from unhelpful patterns of behavior. It gives us the choice to react differently, leading to healthier relationships and more successful outcomes in our personal and professional lives. The parent ego state is like a tape recorder. It plays back the attitudes and behaviors we learned from our parents and other authority figures when we were young. These are the taught concepts of life. This state has two main parts: the nurturing parent and the critical parent. The nurturing parent is caring, loving, and helpful. It is the voice that says, "Don't worry, it will be okay," or "Let me help you with that." This part of the parent wants to protect and support others. It offers comfort and encouragement, just like a kind parent would. We use this state when we take care of someone who is sick, or offer a shoulder to cry on. On the other hand, there is the critical parent, which is sometimes called the prejudiced parent. This part contains the rules, judgments, and criticisms we absorbed as children. It is the voice of shoulds and should nots. For example, phrases like, "You should always clean your plate," or "That's not the right way to do it," come from the critical parent. This state can be controlling and often makes judgments without considering the current facts. It relies on old rules and traditions, which can sometimes be helpful for setting boundaries, but can also be limiting and unhelpful if applied without thought. You can easily spot the parent ego state in everyday conversations. The language often includes words like always, never, should, and must. Body language might include a pointed finger, a furrowed brow, or a comforting pat on the back. For instance, when a manager tells an employee, "You must always be on time, no excuses," they are speaking from a critical parent state. Conversely, if that same manager says, "You look tired, make sure you take a proper break," they are using their nurturing parent state. Both come from a place of authority and learned behavior. Understanding the parent ego state is crucial because its messages can have a powerful influence on us and others. When we are in this state, we are not thinking for ourselves. We are reacting based on old recordings. This can be a source of automatic, unthinking prejudice. It can also be a source of great comfort and support. The goal is not to eliminate the parent state, but to be aware of when we are using it. By using our adult state to examine these taught concepts, we can decide which rules are still useful and which ones we should discard for more thoughtful and appropriate responses. The adult ego state is our rational, logical self. It functions like a computer, processing information from the world around us. It is the thought concept of life. This state is not about age. A child can have a functioning adult state. The adult is focused on the present moment, on what is happening right here and now. It gathers facts, analyzes possibilities, and makes decisions based on data, rather than on old rules from the parent or old feelings from the child. When we are in our adult state, we are being objective, reasonable, and unemotional in our approach to problems. A person operating from the adult ego state asks questions to gather information. They might ask, what are the facts here? Or what are our options? The language of the adult is clear, direct, and non-judgmental. It uses what, why, how, and when to understand a situation fully. The tone of voice is typically calm and even, and the posture is attentive and relaxed. The adult state is essential for problem solving, planning, and making sound judgments. It allows us to navigate the world effectively by responding to reality as it is, not as it was taught or felt in the past. Consider an example in a work setting. Imagine a project deadline is missed. A response from the critical parent might be, "You always miss deadlines. This is unacceptable." A response from the child might be to feel scared and make excuses. However, the adult response would be to analyze the situation. Someone in their adult state would say, "The deadline was missed. Let's look at why this happened and create a new plan to get the project back on track." This approach focuses on solving the problem rather than placing blame or becoming overwhelmed by emotion. Strengthening our adult ego state is the key to effective communication and personal growth. The adult can act as a mediator between the parent and the child. It can examine the rules of the parent and decide if they are still relevant. It can also acknowledge the feelings of the child without letting them take over. By consciously choosing to operate from the adult state, we can make better decisions. We can respond to situations with clarity and purpose, rather than reacting automatically based on past programming. This leads to greater personal freedom and more constructive interactions with others. The child ego state is the part of our personality that is preserved from our actual childhood. It is where our feelings, impulses, and early experiences reside. These are the felt concepts of life. This state is the source of our joy, creativity, curiosity, and intimacy. But it is also the source of our fears, sadness, and anger from when we were young. The child ego state has two main aspects: the natural child, or free child, and the adapted child. The natural child is spontaneous, playful, and expressive. It is the part of us that laughs loudly at a joke or feels pure delight at seeing a beautiful sunset. The other part is the adapted child. This part of our personality learned to change its behavior in response to the demands of parents and other adults. It might learn to be compliant and obedient to get approval, or it might learn to be rebellious and defiant to get attention. The adapted child often carries feelings like guilt, shame, or anxiety. For instance, a person who always apologizes, even when they have done nothing wrong, may be operating from their adapted child. They are trying to please others and avoid criticism, a strategy they likely learned was effective in their youth. We can recognize the child ego state through emotional language and behavior. Words like "I want," "I feel," and "wow" are common. The natural child might shout with excitement, while the adapted child might whine or pout. Imagine a person who receives a surprise gift. Their face lights up and they exclaim, "Oh wow, this is amazing, thank you so much." That is their natural child expressing genuine joy. Now imagine a person being asked to do a task they dislike. They might sigh heavily and say, "Do I have to?" in a complaining tone. That is their adapted child showing its resistance. A healthy and fulfilling life requires access to our child ego state. The spontaneous joy and creativity of the natural child are essential for happiness and close relationships. However, problems arise when the adapted child's old patterns dominate our behavior in adult situations, leading to conflict or unhappiness. By using our adult state, we can understand our child's feelings and needs. We can give ourselves permission to play and be creative, while also managing the difficult emotions that may surface. Awareness allows us to integrate the child's energy into our lives in a positive and constructive way, making us more whole and authentic individuals.